sure I had to swallow my own vomit, and it was really tragic and haunting for months, but so much good came out of it. It would have been so easy to be horrified and angry about it, but instead it was really one of the best experiences. Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit more gloomy, and that's what my first time confronting death as a medical student taught me, which also happens to be the best and worst experience I've had in medical school. It's kind of like that scene in Inside Out where it's one thing, it's bittersweet, it's terrible and excellent at the same time. In fourth year, we had to attend an autopsy as a part of a subject called pathological anatomy. In first year, you do anatomy, which is the study of structures, and histology, which is the study of tissues, more specifically what they look like under microscopes. In third year, we do pathology, which is the study of diseases and what goes wrong in otherwise healthy tissues and structures. In fourth year, we do pathological anatomy, which is kind of the reverse engineering of the process. You look at tissues and structures and deduce what went wrong in them. And this all comes together in the morgue. Let's start by why this was a terrible experience. There was obviously something really haunting and uncomfortable about it, but I'm going to start with why it was gross for some levity. I literally threw up in my mouth a little bit. Like, I at a stage had to swallow back down my own vomit. I was standing next to a sink the entire time because I was so terrified. I cannot tell you what I ate that day, but I can tell you that I regretted every single part of it. This is especially not a great look on a medical student when the pathologist is taking out all of these structures and showing them to you, and you're just in the corner like, I'm not usually squeamish. Things like gore and bodily fluids and other things really don't disgust me, except for bones, which I think is kind of understandable. But it was just the smell. It was absolutely unimaginably bad. It wasn't a dissection, which means that the body wasn't embalmed or preserved in any way, and it was just rot. It was just awful. At a stage, the pathologist told us that we were actually really lucky that this body was only 4 days old, so while there was some bloating and breakdown, it was nowhere near to actual rotting. I'm sure all of you have smelt gone off meat that you've left in the fridge for too long, and now imagine like 60 kilos of that. And the worst part is they didn't let us wear masks. The professor just told us that you actually get used to the smell within a few minutes, but the reason why it felt so constant and coming in waves is because apparently every organ actually has its own unique smell that they can actually tell them apart. But every time I thought I can finally keep the contents of my stomach down, they would bring out a new organ and the smell would just wash over you again. Eventually she allowed us to wear masks, but it really was not enough. Like, I really thought that we should have at least been able to put like Vaseline or put rubbing alcohol on the masks, because I have honestly never experienced something like this. I legitimately searched a few days afterwards if you can get PTSD from smells, because when I would be walking down the street and I would smell something even relatively bad, I would kind of pause and panic. I would have this feeling of dread wash over me again, and then feel just relief, being like, oh, actually, it's just Rome. Joking about the bad smell aside, this was one of the hardest experiences I've ever gone through. It was our first time confronting that as medical students. I think a lot of high school students over-glorify dissections, and it almost becomes a test of characters on who can be the most nonchalant about cadavers. I used to be in a lot of threads and groups that would help high school students get into medicine, and I would viscerally cringe every time I saw one of them write things like, I can't wait to get into medicine and cut up dead bodies and play with dead bodies. Okay, you want to go into a profession where respecting life and empathetically communicating with patients is the highest priority, and you think that that makes you cool? Weird flex, but okay. I mean, I can't complain about it too much because I honestly don't remember what I was like 10 years ago. It's all repressed memories. It's all cringe. So it's very likely that I might have been edgy about it when I was a teenager, but the truth is, it doesn't make you cool to seem careless. It really doesn't make you cool to dehumanize patients even if they're dead. 98% of your colleagues, once you get into medicine, aren't going to care about blood or gore either. It's not the flex that you think it is. So trying to seem edgy about chopping up bodies frankly just makes you seem like an asshole with no empathy, which this field so vitally needs. Anyway, small rant over. This experience was so unsettling to me, and I really feel like our university dropped the ball, which is really surprising because the course itself and the professors were so incredible. It was unsettling to see this person on the table and realize that they had lived a life as full as mine, that they had thoughts and feelings and connections as rich and meaningful as mine. I mean, you realize it, right? That you're just a background character or an extra in their narrative. The same way, they're just an extra in yours that stops existing when they walk away. Everyone around you is living as complex of a life as you are, and one day it's just gone. Do you ever think about how when you look at a photo, there's all these people in the background and you have no idea who they are? It kind of makes me think that how many photos am I in the background of? Or that you're a nobody or nothing in? I understand the importance in letting go of this idea or of things outside of your control, like death, but this is such an unsettling feeling for me to know that this person would never think or touch or feel or love again. And I know that this sounds obvious, but thinking about it in theory is so different than facing it in reality. I think the hardest part for me, though, was seeing how immune the pathologists were to this. I understand the importance of desensitizing and distancing yourself from this to get on with the job, but it's just incredible what we can normalize, what humans can normalize. I mean, even looking at this pandemic, the numbers are worse than it's ever been, but life is just going on. We have totally normalized it. We're just wearing our masks and continuing as if everything is normal. It just felt so awful that these doctors can treat this woman like an inanimate object. I can see both sides of it, you know, the need to distance and desensitize, but also I don't want to think of my loved ones, my friends, my family, my parents and grandparents on that table being treated like that even though they're dead. I understand that we need to let go and accept this as a reality of life, but it just really made me stop and think. Easy to treat patients as extras, but in the same way, it's hard to imagine that your grandparents and your parents and you yourself are just an extra to others. And with the circle of life, we're all going to end up on that table. Yeah, just like the subreddit, I am 14 and this is very deep. You know, the experience wasn't all that bad though. It was gross and haunting, but so much good came out of it for me. When you study medicine, you do so many years of preclinical sciences such as physics and chemistry, which builds into physiology and biochemistry. However, these never really truly feel like real medicine. Sure, you learn diseases as an entity and how it looks and how one thing can lead to another. However, it was such a mind-blowingly different experience to be able to take out this woman's lungs and understand exactly what went wrong. We took out the lungs and noticed that they were foamy, which meant that there was an accumulation of fluid, which would have been the ultimate cause of death. But what caused this excess fluid? We know that fluid leaked out due to some sort of problem of exchange pressures, which means there was some sort of congestion of blood at the level of the lung circulation, which we can then trace back to the heart probably pumping blood inefficiently. So then you check the heart next to see if your deduction was correct, and if I remember correctly, she actually had a dilated heart, which means the walls were all flappy, and so when the heart contracted, it didn't have enough pressure to push blood correctly to the rest of the body. And then you can continue and try to find out why she possibly had flappy wall hearts or whatever else the problem is. It was a beautiful moment to see everything you learned from diagrams and all of these silly equations all actually come together. Even though we weren't working with living patients, it felt so oddly rewarding and beautiful to finally understand everything was happening. All those years of studying basic sciences like chemistry and physics to understand like pressures and gas exchange and how that leads to like ventilation, and then you understand it all at the level of the organ to then understand how everything goes wrong. It actually made me so grateful to be studying medicine and studying all of those subjects that I thought were useless and wouldn't be helpful at all. And also of the human body, even though it's kind of gross. It showed me that not everything you're experiencing now that seems like a waste is always going to be that way. It would have been so easy for me to be horrified by this experience and be angry at my university. Seeing everything come together and understanding that we're just extras in other people's lives so that we should be kind to everyone that we can. It was kind of just life-changing. It also taught me how sometimes terrible experiences can have so much value in them. Sure, I had to swallow my own vomit and it was really tragic and haunting for months, but so much good came out of it. It would have been so so easy to be horrified and angry about it, but instead it was really one of the best experiences I've ever had. It taught me to be appreciative of life and strangers and studying medicine and the human body, and most importantly that you don't have to sign off on terrible experiences. You can choose to focus on the insights and lessons instead. It taught me to trust the process and just put in the hard work. So you should also trust me when I say that you might enjoy studying with me on the study stream, which I'll link up here if you would like to work with me in Pomodoro blocks and then we hang out on the breaks and, shoot the shit. Or if you're a medical student, you might find this video down here somewhere valuable. Or if you want to hear me talk about a really traumatic experience,